Okay, so I had to re-record this video, but because there was an issue with the previous one that I created, so I'm going to try to make it match. Basically, in the previous video, what we were doing is just going over the main characteristics of JavaScript from the MDN. And now let me try to give you a little bit of a demo on how you can start using JavaScript on your projects, okay? So for this, what I tried my best was to replicate what we had before, and then I'm going to do something different here. And this time I'm going to open the terminal directly on VS Code. And then the way we have been doing this is that I can start like an HTTP server or something like that in there, which opens the port 8081 in this case. And oops, adding too much in there. But let's put it like that. And then you can see this is kind of like the last I think we did, or I hope it's close enough. I do have another one in here, so let me make sure that I close that and close that as well, just in case. So in this case, I'm going to be controlling things in here. Now, since we are going to start working with JavaScript, then we want to start changing some elements in here. So the first one is that I want to initialize this. So let me actually clear this. So I want to initialize this as a JavaScript project, and you do that by running npm init. What that says is that it creates a package JSON file, which is this one in here. And I'm saying, do not ask me any questions, just go with the default answers. And then I'm going to say that the author for this is John Alexis Guerra Gomez, and the license for this is MIT. And you can start adding dependencies from JavaScript. So for that, you can go and do npm install. Remember that we were running HTTP server and also the reload and something like that. Let me increase a little bit the volume. You can run those things using npm install. But then in this case, I want to install them as dependencies. And I want to install things like ESLint and Prettier. And I'm also going to include the configuration for making ESLint talk better with Prettier and a bunch of other things in there. For the moment, I'm going to leave it like that. When you do that, then you see that now in the package JSON, I have these development dependencies. Those are dependencies that only apply for when you are a developer and not when you're trying to run the application, which is more like a functional dependency. And the next thing after that will be just to run ESLint. And then they used to have like an ESLint init command. We can actually go and try to run that. Oh, let's see how it goes. Do you want to install that? Yes, please. So what do you want to lint? I want to lint JavaScript, JSON Markdown, CSS. Oh, can I do also CSS? That's interesting. Let me go with JavaScript for the moment so we don't screw up things. Would you like to use ESLint? Yes. To check syntax and find problems? Yes. I am going to be using imports and exports. I am going to be using React later, but for the moment, no. I'm not using TypeScript, and I want to run this in the browser and in Node, although in this project it's only in the browser, but let's go with that for the moment. Will you want to install these things? Yes, please. And I'm using npm, and then it creates, oh good, perfect, it actually did create that. And then you can go with this default file. However, since I've been, and this is very important, whenever you're using ESLint, make sure that you're using version 9, because everything I'm going to tell you, it's pretty much for version 9 of ESLint. If you search for ESLint config file, then you're going to find that there used to be like 2 different types of files. I wonder if they still specify anything from the other one. They don't. But there used to be another way of creating these files that weren't as JavaScript files. It was instead as JSON objects, and that was the classical one. And when you try to search online, you're going to find most of the documentation for that. Long story short, I have spent, you wouldn't believe how many hours just trying to find like a perfect configuration. So I have kind of a good one that you can find on this specific file. I think I might even copy that one in here just to help you. Let me see if I can do that in here. So I'm going to create another terminal and then copy my beat at ESLint, and I'm going to copy that here. let me put a new folder in there that I'm going to call scripts or whatever, and then I'm going to append that one in there. Okay. Good, perfect. So now that I have done that, let me close this one. Basically, what that script does, it's something extremely simple. Let me double wrap so you can see that in here. It is installing ESLint, the config, prettier, globals, which basically these are the two that ESLint was suggesting, and then also for testing and also the configuration for prettier. And then I'm also copying this file, which from my local folder in here. And then if you see that file, it will look something like this. So what I recommend you is just putting that folder into your ESLint folder in your home folder, if that makes any sense. Feel free to ask me questions on Slack. And then just with that, you're going to be able to see these type of things. Like even in that same file, there are some rules that are being broken, and that really helps. Sadly, I couldn't get any errors in here. So in the previous video I recorded, I got an error. Oh, by the way, so now we have two files, and then let me get rid of this one so we can make sure that we are using the correct one. Let me restart the ESLint server, and then we can have that. And this also reminds me, we need to change something here in the package.json. In order for us to use only modules, like ES6 modules, then you need to have the type module in the package.json, okay? So let me go in here and then make an error, okay? So let's say that, for instance, this is the error that I had to fix on the other one, just to show you a little bit of the debugging. And then after doing that, in order for breaking these things, I'm going to come in here in the terminal. I'm going to delete the package log. Whenever you have problems with packages, this is recommended. So very careful. When you do this one, it's saying I'm going to delete the files. This is going to be recursively and forcefully, so it is not going to stop, okay? And I'm only removing the package log. Notice that it's not the package.json, and the node modules folder, which contains the locally installed folder, like packages, okay? So if I do that, and then I restart the ESLint server, now you can see that this thing is failing. You see this little X in here, and if you go to the output of that, this is telling me that it cannot find the package globals. And I can fix that just, again, by going back to the terminal, and it's because I deleted the packages. So if I do npm install, and since I already have these ones in here, that should go and install like globals, as you can see in here, and ESLint and all of that. But since I deleted one of the packages, then this still should show an error. Let me restart the ESLint server just to make sure. Remember, when I see restarting the ESLint server, I'm doing that Command-Shift-P on Mac. You can also access that in here, View, Command Palette. And then if I go into that, now it is going to tell me that it's missing this package, ESLint plugin prettier, which is the one that I deleted. So in this case, I'm going to fix it like that. npm install -- save def ESLint plugin prettier. Okay. So now that I have done that, let me restart the ESLint server again, and now it is working. Okay. So now that I have that working, if I want to add that in here, oh yes, like I had that in here, like this is how it will normally look like. It just had the HTML file. So if I go into that one, let me collapse things probably in here, or like at this level might be good. You can see that we had the header. Actually, let's go and do it in here. So we have the header, the main, and then the footer. And then before the end, then you can start like putting, like you can actually start adding JavaScript in any point in the code. But remember, we want to separate functions. So although we are going to go back from that, and then let me quiet Copilot for a while because it's starting to write things in there. But in any case, I can just go and put like a script in here of what I want to do, like whatever JavaScript. But since we want to separate things, I'm just going to put my JavaScript on a separate file. And that is going to be in the JavaScript folder, like from the current folder, the JavaScript folder, and it's going to be called main.js. And then I'm going to create that folder, JavaScript, and then in there I'm going to create the main JavaScript. From that one, I can just start writing my code. So for instance, I can go and put in here console log, and basically I can just go and say, hola, mundo. And if I want to test that this is working, and notice that ESLint is checking for things for me. So if I go and write something wrong, then ESLint is telling me, oh, that's a variable that doesn't exist. Okay, so that's what you want to have working. Make sure that you have this one without errors and this one without errors. Okay. What else can I tell you there? So now that we want to see if this thing is working properly, remember you can just go and reload, run reload again, which takes me here. Since now we're working with JavaScript, and even before, always recommend you to have the developer tools open, and then you can see that in there. And if I go and I start adding my error, like in there, then you can also start seeing the errors in there. Okay. What else should I go and say in there? Like for instance, let's do a very basic thing in there. Like for instance, let me go into, because I don't want to give too much, because you guys have like a self-assessment for JavaScript where I want you to go and start modifying the DOM in there. So what I want to do is let me find my form, which, no, these are the listings, so I don't care about those for the moment. And here is the create listing. So in there, in this form, I'm going to go and say I'm going to create an ID, and let's call it form create listing. And then from that one, I can go and take, for instance, this ID, which I could go and say it's an input, and then call it, this is the title, input title. Okay, so you can add similar ones for all the other ones. Like for instance, we can go and say this is going to be the input price, and this one can be the input description. Okay, running prettier in there. And then finally here in my JavaScript, what I can go and say is that, let me go and say that I want to create my input title, which is going to be selected by calling the DOM. This is like the library for modifying the document object manipulator, whatever. It's a library that is only available in the browser, not in the backend, but then it allows me to go and use CSS selectors. Let me try to put this in a separate thing in here, and then I have that one. So remember, we created this ID in here. So I can go, my favorite one, it's like doing query selector, but since we are selecting by ID, you can do get element by ID. If you want to know what options you have, then you can always just go MDN, and then like maybe DOM. And this can get you like whole information about like the different things that you can do in there for different elements, or even for this one, which I guess is the document, and then like all of the different functions that you can do in there. I wonder if I can see get element. Here we go. So here is the get element by ID. So you can find all of the documentation for all of those. Okay. At this point, if you guys want to have Copilot, then you can have it. Let me like use it. Just be very careful. Like I recommend you not to use it at the beginning, because it's going to start telling you a lot about like auto-completing too much, and that could be detrimental for you. In any case, I can go and say that I want to select, oh no, because I'm doing element by ID, then you can see, so actually let me snooze Copilot for a while. So I want to do the input title, and then that input title is going to be matching this one. So since I'm using get element by ID, I don't use the hash, but if you use my favorite one, which is query selector, you just pass a CSS selector, like something like this. And then I'm going to do the same for the other ones. And then I just change this title for price, and then I change this one for description, and just so this thing is more readable, then I can do that. And one of the cool things about this is that if I come here, then I can go and say that actually this is an input. So since it is an input, I can go and say here, John was here. So if I do that, and then let me save this, then you can see this was modified. You didn't have time to see it in action though. So let me go and do it after doing something else. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create another one of these ones. In this case, is going to be like the bottom cancel. And then I'm going to say here, I want to say button cancel, which I haven't really identified yet, but is going to be this one. And then I say this is going to be my button cancel. Okay. And then what I'm going to do in there is that I'm going to tell this thing that when I call the button cancel, I want to append an event listener. And that it's a function that is going to say when somebody clicks on the button, okay, I want you to do something. So what I can do in there to make it more clear, I can go and say on click cancel, okay? And this is going to be a function, which remember that we can do, for instance, an arrow function like this. And then what I'm going to do in there is that I can go and say this, right? Now, as you can see, ESLint is complaining because I'm not doing anything yet with that. And then what I'm going to do in there is that I'm going to pass the onClick cancel function, okay? And the onClick cancel function, it's a function. If I want to call that function, let me comment this out for a second. So if I do this, notice that I don't have a title, but if I call that and I save, and since I have reload, then it's going to execute again, and then you have that, okay? Now, the key in here is that I can go and say something like this, and when I do that, it doesn't show up in there. But since this is an event listener, I'm not calling the function, I'm passing the function as a parameter of that event listener. That is part of the synchronous programming of JavaScript. So this, I am not executing the function. It is going to be executed by the browser when I click on this. You see? Ooh, and it's disappearing right away. Oh, I wonder why. That's interesting. I wonder if it has anything to do with reload. That's kind of interesting. Let me go and set up this one. I was expecting that to happen. Oh, it might be because, yeah, I wonder. In any case, if I do that, yes, it's still, oh, I think I know, yes, I think I know what's happening. So probably it's because like every time you call an event listener, like the event handler can receive an event parameter, and then like all of the events are going to have a method, and this default is that when you complete a form like that, it goes into a different page. That is the one that is getting all of this information. But since I'm going to be controlling that form directly from JavaScript, I don't want it to be doing the default behavior. So I don't navigate to a different page, okay? So having said that, fingers crossed, I hope it's this one, yeah, and then events. So basically, now you can see that it stays in there and it doesn't go away, okay? So, however, like the cancel, probably what I want to be doing in there, it's actually clearing up all the values. And then, so I can go and do something like this. In price, and I want this one to be 0 because that it's a number. I hope it doesn't complain that I'm giving it a number. And let's see what it does. So if I do that, and then I refresh, and then I put things in here, then I click that, and then it refreshes. Yay! Okay, so we can go and say something like this. So for the self-assessment, like I guess what I want you to do is to go and try to get that when I go and I create something, it will append something, or that it will be loading directly from the JSON file. So please take a look at that. For the moment, let me stop in there. I might record another one for the other ones. Now, the other thing I had recorded, and now this is going to get things a little bit complicated, is that how you get started with the project for submitting. And in general, like how do you get started with a JavaScript project? So if you take a look at this, This is the one from the previous semester, and this is the one that I was creating out, like in this semester, that didn't get recorded. So I'm going to try to replicate that again. I'm going to do that with Airbnb 3, 4, but then copy these so I can be consistent. So I want to create a new one. So just be aware that you probably want to use 3 in the, though in the 3 I didn't write this, so it's up to you. Okay. So in any case, you want to make sure that you put like a description page in here that is good, and then application for collecting. So let me go and say simple modern HTML plus CSS plus JavaScript application to simple demo of a modern to load Airbnb listings. Okay. For this, I want to use like a public visibility, make sure everyone can see it. I want to add a git ignore, and I want that to be for GitHub, for Node projects. Very important, choose the license, MIT license. If you didn't do this and you already created a repository, you can just add a license file, capital letters, no extension, to your repository, and then GitHub should give you an interface for that. Now that I have created that, then I can come in here. Then I usually use SSH for authentication because that's how I have GitHub set up. And then the next thing you want to do in here, it's initialize GitHub on this repository. So when you do that, do I have that in here? That is going to create, this is the one that I'm making. There we go. It is going to create this kind of secret file that you see in here, or secret folder, like .git, that contains like all the information for this. And then I want to do git origin. I think it's, yes, no. Oh yeah, sorry, git remote. I want to create a new remote, and I want to append a new remote that I'm going to call origin. Basically, remotes on GitHub, really quickly, it's like different servers that you could go and have for the same project. Usually you will have only one remote. But if you have like fork a project or something, that you might have 2 remotes, you can go and decide where you want to push or pull your information from. In this case, I want to add this one. The remote is going to be called origin, and this is the URL for that. And then if you just go and say git remote -v, then you see that we now have that. And then I can do a git pull from origin and the main branch, which is this branch that we have in here. You use branches for creating different versions of your project, or like more specifically for whenever you're working on a feature, you usually go and create a branch for it, test that everything is correct in there, and then only go to the main branch or the development branch or the deployment branch once you have tested that everything works properly. Okay. So I have done that, and when I do that, then basically I see the license file in here and my git ignore. And then what I want to do is that I want to append everything, okay? And I want to, since I have the git ignore, then this helps. And then I'm going to say initial commit. I'm going to create the first commit. Basically, the commits are going to be like the different submissions that you made, and they are going to be made first locally, and then when you push them, they're going to go to the server. The -a that I'm adding at the end is going to say add all of the files that I'm adding, so that is going to include all of those things. And then I can just go and say git push, and then I can say that I'm going to be pushing on the origin main, okay? If I just do git push, then I'm going to get this error, which I like setting up that this is going to be my upstream branch. So that way I can just do git push for sending things. And when you do that, that is going to get you something like this. Then the final step is what continues on the other video. So make sure to match, and you can decide if you want to use this demo page 4 or demo page 3 for that. With that, I think that's it. And let me know if you have any questions in Slack, or if you're just watching this on YouTube, you can leave a comment here as well. Okay, thank you.